Hi there. Thanks for joining us on KLEW TV Homes. I'm Dan Stellman. We've brought back Don Brigham from Don Brigham Landscape Architects plus Associates, and we appreciate his expertise in the field of water-wise plantings and landscaping. Don, thanks for coming back.
You bet, Dan. My pleasure.
Let's pick it up where we left off. We were talking about grass substitutes. Yeah, give us a choice. Because, again, and as you said, Kentucky bluegrass is pretty much in every bag of seed mix that we see out there.
Yeah, so there are many other choices. Again, I think side-by-side comparisons, most people couldn't tell the difference between some of the other more water-wise ones. And I've noticed, you know, I'm not advertising for anybody, but Pat's Nursery, Home Depot, most of the places do sell mixes that are much better, and so the word is getting around. It's obviously supply and demand, chicken and egg thing, and so when people start asking for it, the growers and the suppliers will start bringing it in. But that's a good place to start. In fact, if you're wanting a lawn for play, you know, softball, volleyball, lawn darts, whatever, the fescues are much tougher. That's what the sports stadiums use. They don't use Kentucky bluegrass.
Much more resilient.
Yeah.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, and maybe as a sidelight, but are there parks in town that utilize the substitutes that you're referring to?
Yeah, I think the city of Lewiston pretty much, I mean, depends upon when they're planted, but as they overseed and put in new ones, it's all going to be the water-wise stuff. Lynn Moss and his great staff are really in tune to this, and they're paying water bills like everybody else, so why put down the extra?
Do they fill well, and do they overtake the Kentucky bluegrass, and so with overseeding you can over time sort of, as opposed to starting from scratch?
Yeah, well, it's easier to start from scratch, but that's a good question. I don't know how they would compete. You know, they're going to come in and each has its own season. Some perennial ryegrass, which is in some of the mixes, comes up and greens. That's the one you see greening in the middle of February.
Right.
So they'll come in and establish themselves.
And I would imagine doing plugs would help that replacement. But along with replacing the type of thirsty grass that we merely mow and don't utilize, what else can we do to landscape a little bit more water-wise?
Well, I think some of it's just kind of doing an inventory of what you have that typically people just overwater. You know, there's no need here or anywhere except Mojave Desert to water junipers. They can get by, and there's many other plants like that that people just overwater, and then they become too big and are a fire hazard and all those sort of things. So one of the rules of water-wise landscaping, one of the basic principles, is to group things together. And so I'm not advocating that you get rid of, you know, birches, rhododendrons, the real water thirsty type plants, but you maybe just put them by your back patio or the front door, and then you zone them together, you water them with the same amount, and then somewhere else can become the less thirsty plants.
And one sprinkler can be assigned to that area as opposed to covering turf that watering my fence, for example, probably isn't a good idea. Yeah, and you know, obviously it's always easier starting from scratch, but just renovating something, if you have an existing, that's a tough word to say, existing irrigation system, look at whether you're wanting to sprinkle the whole thing as opposed to just dripping on the plant, which keeps down the weeds and everything. You know, we're gonna start to run out of time here in just a second. The fact that we've had a lot of rain recently as of this taping shouldn't sway me from thinking ahead, should it? No,
people got to, I mean, if you've lived here a couple of years, you know what July, August, September is when we get zero precip, and so you got to prepare for that. And you know, actually with the rationing that LOID does, that's not bad. If you water less frequently and water deeper, that forces the roots down and prepares the plants for that dry.
Those people that have sworn to me about deep root watering always have the prettiest lawns. and I appreciate your input. Don Brigham, thanks for being here. Folks, check KLEW TV Homes for replays of this and other interviews. Thanks for being with us.